All right, we're really set now. Ooh, I'm so excited to be in your house this time.
There you go.
Good
Hello,
afternoon,
hello, hello. How
and
you doing?
blessings. Oh, I thank God again today for this
Yes. Oh,
opportunity.
please,
You
yes.
know, I always say that because we are so blessed to have the chance
Yes.
to disseminate information that I call very relevant today, or any
Yes,
day for
yes.
that matter, just
Especially
that
today.
particularly today.
That's right.
And I just think of, thank God, and I think the scripture that said, my people will perish for lack of knowledge, and we're just trying to get some knowledge out
That's
there
right. Get it out there. Get it
and
out.
real true knowledge, because
Yes.
we get a lot of knowledge now. A whole lot of knowledge, not necessarily
Yeah.
what we need or what the truth
Whole lot
is.
of stuff out there,
Whole lot
right?
of stuff, but I just thank God for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thank God for my crew here,
Mm-hmm.
my producers, Lula Williams Salvador, and Sheila Bird, Brown Bird.
Brown bird.
And of course, I thank my promo crew, the little ones.
That's
They
right. Yeah.
14-year-old,
Yes,
one of
yes.
them, Elijah, and
That's
the
right.
little 9-year-old. No, he's 10
Yeah,
now. I better
please,
not say
please.
that.
Give him his
10-year.
props now.
Give him his prop. Halim.
I leave. All
And
right.
of course, my advisor, Juanita, I think she's still there in North Carolina, enjoying her grandson
Oh, man.
graduation from a
Beautiful.
North Carolina state.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can understand that.
Yes.
And of course, I thank Norm, this young man here, who gives me the opportunity, gives me the space,
Running the
and
studio.
keep it real. Yes, he does. Keep us going.
He
I
does.
thank him so much for that. And of course, my co-host, Terry Benjamin.
I'm
Hey.
here. I'm here. I'm here.
And of course, y'all know me, Ivory Williams Schreiber, your unapologetic amateur, looking for experts. And boy, are
Yes,
we
she
bringing
is.
them on.
Oh, we are.
We are bringing them on, because I tell you, this young lady that I got on from all the way from California,
Oh, my goodness. Come
that's
on. Come on. Come
warm
on.
state.
Come on.
I tell
Bring
you,
it.
she's
Bring it.
gonna bring it to us today, because we need that.
We do.
We need all that, the information that she has particularly, but we're going in that later on. What is now, we're still in Mental Health
It's a
Awareness Month.
Yes.
And
still.
are we being made aware? I tell you, part of our deliverance, I believe, will be the concentration of our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just so pleased at my church, First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in Somerset,
Mm-hmm.
under the pastorate of Dr. Dante Quick, is bringing us, his congregation, into the 21st century. You know, because that old school to neglect one's mental health. The congregation went downstairs after service last Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, and to listen to a mental health specialist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you know, so
That's great.
that's new age.
It is. It is.
Uh-huh.
No, that's
And that's not all our pastor is doing. He's just been right on the money. He's just been
That's
bringing
beautiful.
it.
That's a
I
blessing.
tell you,
That's a
because we
blessing.
have a mental. What is it? I think it's a mental health pastoral care team coming up
Wow. Okay.
within the church.
right on
We just
time.
yeah,
That's
very
beautiful.
much so.
Oh, yeah.
And that will allow our community to get the help we need.
Yes. Yes.
Reliable help, and I use that reliable help for us.
Yes.
You
no, we
know,
need it.
now what's done, and that is done under the directorship of a sister, Queen Minister Kamara Bird,
Oh, wow. Okay.
who will be my guest next Monday.
Oh, wow.
And you
okay.
don't want to
Oh,
miss it.
hey, hey.
So that is
And the hits
excellent.
just keep on coming.
The hits just keep on coming. But I tell you, but for today, I
Oh,
am
yes,
so
today,
excited.
Today.
My guest today is a diva.
Oh, yes.
I'm almost always tempted to call her Reverend, but I think that's her husband, Reverend.
Yeah, yeah.
But the preeminent scholar,
yeah.
and an on-time author. And I say that with great reverence. I really
Yes,
do.
yes, yes.
Y'all know how I've
It's an
been trying to
accomplishment.
encapsulate the essence of this
That's
podcast
right. Yes, you
by
have.
referring, to the gatekeepers
That's
and
right.
the watchmen
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah.
scripture. One who's assigned by God to
Yes.
keep watch.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
might sound a little bit hyperbolic,
No, 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 but
but don't
it's correct.
underestimate
It's
yourself,
correct. Yeah.
because God brought Moses
Mhm.
out of the wilderness.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was not the top of the hierarchy.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, because when I tell people this pandemic, as bad as it was,
Mhm.
God showed me how I can use it
Yes, yeah, yes.
as that rod He gave to Moses.
That's right.
He
That's
said to
right.
show how your enslavement and
Mhm.
the cure for it is just as specific and important as that virus.
Isn't that something?
Now,
Isn't that something?
so and that requires experts, as I explained. I have to keep saying that
Yeah, yeah.
because we have a lot of experts in different areas.
Yes, yes.
Doesn't mean that we have experts in the area of Africanism, as I phrase that word.
You are right. You're correct.
See, but sometimes it's difficult to articulate the essence of the message when I
Yes.
use the word expert.
Right, right.
But now that I have added experts in Africanism,
Mhm. Makes it
I
more
pray that
specific
it is
there.
more
Yeah.
definitive.
Yes, yes.
You know,
yes,
so
yes.
when this queen and I got together a couple of weeks ago, Paige, I'm talking about,
Is that-
we
that-
will
that
talk
queen.
about that. But when I picked up her book,
Oh my goodness.
Healing the Wounds
That's-
of American
we
Slavery,
got our books. We got our books.
I was blown away, I tell you. She's
Oh, man.
recognizing, see, we have wounds,
We do.
and that they came from a place,
That's right.
America,
That's right.
and we need healing.
We do.
See, this may preclude us from pointing our fingers at each other as if we are the healers.
It does something.
We are the messengers.
We are.
To
We are.
heal means that means to me you are referring to something or someone who has the capacity
Yes, yes.
or the skills to do so.
That's it.
And I'm not talking biblical now because God is the ultimate healer.
That's right. Ultimate.
But I'm talking about early beings,
yes, yeah.
our
you're right.
earthly beings.
Yeah, yeah. That makes
You
a
know.
difference, yeah.
Now, my co-host will read the bio, and we're going to hear from this great author.
Yes, before I read the bio, I have to definitely invite you onto the program, in a special way. That's for you, Miss Page. Page means Hopper, is the visionary author and driving force behind the book and movement, Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. Page delves into the profound impact of historical trauma on contemporary society. Through her book and organization, she offers a compelling perspective on the enduring legacy of American slavery, one that permeates every aspect of American life, whether acknowledged or denied. At the core of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery lies a transformative approach that challenges entrenched societal norms. Page reinvigorates age-old paradigms and conversations, fostering unprecedented shifts in perspectives among individuals in personal relationships, communities, and institutions. Page's insights have earned her recognition on influential global platforms, including appearance on the Tavis Smiley show on KBLA 1580 Talk, Pat Robinson's CBN Global News, Backstory with Marsha Duffy, and more. Educated at a private institution, California Baptist University and California State University at Northridge, Page received high honors at both, earning a master's degree in public relations and bachelor's degree in cinema and television arts. Page is also a certified business and life coach, enhancing her ability to effect meaningful and lasting global change. Welcome, my sister. Good to see you again.
Wow, 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 wow.
Impressive.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Yes,
you.
welcome,
And I
Paige.
want
So
to
good
give
to
a
see
special
you.
thanks to Brother Terry and Sister Ruby. Sister Ruby, thank you. It's an honor and a blessing to be here. And
Yes.
to Brother Terry, I've been waiting to see you face to face, so to speak. I
So to
mean, it's
speak, so to
virtual,
speak,
but
so to speak. Yes.
to give you great thanks for your wonderful review on Amazon. I really
Oh,
appreciate that.
Paige. Oh, thank you.
And I would also just like to say that this is a platform that is so necessary, and I just feel absolutely special that I
Oh,
was
you
invited
are,
here
You
today.
are.
believe
Thank
You
me.
you.
are. You are.
Definitely you are. And being special, I want to know where did that start from. I tell you.
Oh, but hey, where'd you get that specialness?
Yeah, give us some background. Where you're from, how you came here, what's influenced, who influenced you, and what.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am Paige Means Hopper,
Yes, you are.
and I am married to the great Pastor Michael
Oh,
Hopper from
Okay,
well, he's
yes, I got
from
it.
oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Tuskegee, but he now lives in California with me, obviously.
Obviously.
And I was born in Oakland, California. My background is such that I had a special perspective on what the Black Panthers were doing during their formulation in Oakland with the great Huey P. Newton. My father was best friends with Melvin Newton. And so, there were often conversations in our home or their home. And I didn't know, I was a baby then. I didn't know what I was really listening to, but obviously it soaked into my DNA.
Yes, yes.
But the biggest influence for writing this book, there are two. Number one is my grandfather, who we call grandfather. Really creative, right? Creative.
Yes,
So,
yes.
but his name is General Williams. And we used to go visit them every summer. And so he had this great shade tree out front. And we would sit under the shade tree and listen to grandfather tell us stories, for our entertainment and edification and education. And one day, grandfather started telling us a story by picking up his old pipe and through, puffs of smoke, he just arbitrarily said to us, you know, I used to be a hobo.
What?
And I'm like the little orator and storyteller in bloom. And so I need to hear this story.
The
So I
story.
scoot up very, very close to grandfather, and he begins to unfold this story about when he was a young man.
Yes.
And he and his friends were jumping trains to get from one place to
What?
another
Oh,
place.
my goodness.
And one day they jumped a train, and these three white boys pulled them off of the train, or as they were getting off the train, pulled them to the side and asked them where they were going. And when my grandfather said, we're going north, he said, no, you're not. You're coming with us. He
Oh,
trapped my
goodness,
grandfather,
yes,
beat
yes.
my
Oh, my
grandfather up,
goodness, what?
beat him up really badly, and stuffed him inside of a tin shed in the boiling hot sun of the
Oh,
South.
my goodness.
And my grandfather was in there for about 3 days. No place to relieve himself, no food, no water, and he almost died in there. And he's telling us this story. And as he's telling us this story, I'm looking into my father's face, his son, David L. Means. And my father just had this expression I'd never seen before. Because, my father, he's one of those who you don't want to meet in a dark alley.
I
And tough,
agree.
tough,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Tough skin, country boy.
yes, yes, yes.
And he was sitting there with tears in his eyes that he would not allow to drop. And I'd never seen my father cry, not once in my life. And I'm about 7 years old at this time.
Wow, wow.
And so I'm looking to my father for clues of what to do and what to say as grandfather's telling us this disparaging story. I mean, it's horrific. And all I saw was just this rage, this inner rage. And so that was the first droplet into my young DNA, right? At least my conscious DNA,
Yes, yes, yes.
as to someone being brutally, horrifically abused because of the color of their skin. The second factor was when I was in a church and I was receiving prayer. And as I'm receiving prayer, I begin to have a memory.
Okay.
But what I realized is that the memory was not mine. I had never been in the deep South. I had never been in a slave cabin. I had never seen rows of cotton. I'd not even smelled, field cotton at that point. But in this memory, which came through an epigenetic experience, I'll explain what that is in just a moment. I began to have a visceral memory of a young slave girl in a cabin with her family, looking out at rows and rows and rows and rows of cotton that she knew she and her family must pick. And she's thinking, this sun is going to be burning my back like the devil's eyes, and those stalks are going to be biting my fingers like snakes. And if I don't do it, they're going to take me round back and beat me within an inch of my life.
Wow.
And when I came out of that memory, now understand, it wasn't a dream. I was wide awake. It wasn't a vision. I know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This was a memory. And when I came out of the memory, I am on the floor of this church screaming my guts out. And I got up and I, at that time, had a pad of paper and a pen. And I just began to write everything that happened and everything that I felt. And it was at that moment that I realized, more than historically, more than from a book, which, by the way, we had the Negro Heritage Library in our house. You remember those brown
Oh,
encyclopedias?
yeah,
Remember,
yeah. I
right.
remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
We had that. My mother
Yes,
was
yes.
very, we were very in tune to, history and politics and all of it. But I had never had a visceral experience like that before, where I knew for sure that something happened in this country that is still affecting not only myself, not only yourself, but everyone who has ever planted their feet on American soil, and specifically those of us who are of the African diaspora.
Yes.
And so that's where Healing the Wounds of American Slavery began.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
That is extremely powerful. But
powerful.
what it does, it tells us that there's something through us and still in us and about us that connects with what happened to us.
That's right.
So when we decide that we don't need to understand our history, or we don't understand what that 200 years, and I won't even deal with the last 200, just the
Yes.
first 200 did to us and left the indelible marks on us and through us,
Yes.
then that alone tell you, and you are not the only one.
No,
Many of our
I'm
people
not.
have had those
yeah, yeah, yeah,
experiences,
yeah, yeah.
I tell you about the one I had wasn't as visceral, but when I heard the question asked, are we ready for integration? It sparked the same kind of thought
Yeah, yeah,
pattern
yeah,
in
yeah,
my mind. We, the people you
Visceral, yeah, yeah,
enslaved,
yeah, yeah.
are you kidding? We got to get ready for you. So it was those kinds of things, and that's just a minor thing that I felt. Yours was extremely powerful
Yeah.
in that.
Yes,
but
and
it
that was only
tells the
one of
story.
three.
I,
That
okay,
was
tell
only
me the
one
other
of
two.
three.
All right, tell me the other
Yeah,
two.
well, I won't tell all of them.
Okay.
Because we get to
but
the book.
and the last one, the second one was equally, I mean, they were all just so vivid. It was like I was there. You know why? Because at some level I was.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
yes,
I'll
yes.
get into that later. But I wanted to circle back and tell the audience what epigenetics is.
Okay.
All right.
So, and I didn't know at the time when I had this memory, and I was afraid to tell too many people because I didn't want them to think I was crazy.
Right.
Oh,
But
wow.
then a friend of mine told me about Joy DeGruy.
Yeah.
Joy DeGruy,
Okay.
Dr. Joy DeGruy is, I call her like the grandmother of this movement of
Yes.
going back in order to go forward to
Post-traumatic
heal
slave
Right,
syndrome.
ourselves.
right. Yeah.
And she actually is a friend. I have her number on
Okay.
speed dial in my phone.
How lucky
Because
are
she,
you?
back in 2003-ish, between 2003 2005, somewhere in there, a friend of mine told me, Paige, I know you're writing this book. You must go and see this woman. And I went to go and see this woman. I have a picture of she and I in a corner
Okay.
because I'm asking her, have you heard of anyone else having one of these kind of memories?
Wow,
And she
yeah.
opens up her manuscript, which wasn't even a book back then. It was her manuscript. It was in a 3-ring binder, a tiny little 3-ring binder. And we're in the corner looking through her book together.
Wow, that's amazing.
And she didn't know then what this was called, but she had heard of several people having these experiences. But like myself, they didn't want anyone to think they were crazy, so they weren't talking about it a lot. But then, and I kept following her every time she was in town, or sometimes I would go, to a town where she was speaking.
Right.
But it wasn't until 2010 she added an extra slide to her slide deck, and it talked about epigenetics. And
Oh,
I
wow,
tell you,
okay.
that room was full of people, and I didn't care. I hollered when she threw that slide up because I finally had my answer as to what had happened to me. Epigenetics is a phenomenon where the memories of trauma, the literal memories of trauma, and the remembrances of certain experiences other than trauma passed down from one generation to the next through our DNA. And they did a study on plants, I wasn't interested in plants. I kind of put that one to the side. But then when they got down to mice, I thought, okay, mice have flesh and blood. Let me start here. And it was our scientists have been teasing at this and working at this for a long time. But it was that, of course, that doesn't show up in the media. But it wasn't until a white Jewish scientist named Rachel Yehuda started doing research on the Holocaust victims and their progeny that they started bringing this out into the forefront. And she talks about the first experiment that was done with mice, where they had a pregnant female mouse. And first she wasn't pregnant at all, just a mouse. And they were torturing her while allowing her to smell a broken cherry blossom. So this scent of a cherry blossom was associated with the abuse, just like Pavlov's dogs. When they heard the bell, they come running for food. And so they kept torturing the mouse and letting her smell a cherry blossom. And so it was registered with her DNA, like, well, cherry blossoms mean pain. Then the mouse gets pregnant. And she has her litter of mice. And the litter of mice were never exposed to abuse, were never exposed to cherry blossoms. And she wasn't even impregnated with this litter when she was going through this episode. Or experimentation. But when those mice were born, they just simply allowed them to smell the cherry blossom. And they went ballistic.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So then fast forward to her research on Holocaust victims. There's a strand in the DNA, there's a cell and a strand of DNA in the Holocaust victims themselves. But then she did the experimentation on the progeny or the descendants of those Holocaust victims. And what she found is that same strand, the specific cell that holds or hosts memory, and particularly trauma.
Yes.
Was the same cell was distorted in both the Holocaust victims and their descendants. And the descendants, of course, had not gone through the Holocaust.
Wow.
Right.
So then I could feel a little bit more at ease with what happened to me. And as these memories are continuing to come up and I'm receiving more and more prayer, more of these wounds, I call them, were coming to the surface. And we know that the primary wound across the board, I don't care what psychology book you read, what scientific publication, white papers, whatever, even the Bible itself, we know that the primary wound among all human beings is fear. And that's the instrument that was used against our ancestors, was fear.
Now, if you take that and multiplied a few times. Forget about the 1,000 times. I would suggest it was 1,000 times worse, but I do some things sometimes.
Of course.
But multiply it twice, 3 times over. Then you can get a sense of what we had to have gone through and still going through, and it's still lasting in our DNA. And when you talk about the good sister DeGraw, the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome is one that I keep close to the vest because it does tell so much about what we need to know in terms of how things have affected us. So we kind of minimize, and we may even equate sometimes with other groups, but there's nothing that I've read or have heard about or heard of anyone have talked about that compare. Ours are so uniquely different than anything else that have happened to any other human being that we have to know. Then if it required, or if those folks who studied the Holocaust and other tragedies, then obviously we need that too. So that's the message I'm trying to bring through here. We just need to get very conscious of how we have neglected, and I won't say we neglected because then point the finger again.
No.
It's not us neglected. We have not had the opportunity. We have not had the experts, because just what you described, just what you described, I would not necessarily know that.
That's true.
Right.
You would not necessarily know that, but you had a friend of yours who told you about that particular tragedy and what it entails.
That's right. Yeah.
We need those folks to be on, because if we don't do that, we'll grab anybody off the street. Now, one of the things you notice about us, when things happen to us, rather than go get you or the expert or whomever, we'll grab a celebrity. That's false information. Just allow them to talk for us.
That's not
Or
helping.
we'll go get someone who, an academician. We will get someone who don't necessarily know about our situation. Our situation is such different from anything else that ever happened to a human being that we need someone who knows specifically. Just like that virologist who studied specifically about that, the epidemiologist who studied specifically about the virus. We need someone equally as specific.
Experts.
Don't just take for granted anyone can tell our story the way it should be told. But
we do. And I mean, I've read, it took me, first of all, let me just clarify. It took me 20 years to write my book. And the reason that it took me 20 years is because I had to wrestle and contend with each of these wounds as they were coming up so that I could understand the etymology. So the root of that word of fear, what does that really mean? I mean, when you really look at the word rage, one of the wounds is contained rage. And when you look at the word rage and go all the way back to its Latin roots, and you think about that these are Europeans who were inflicting this pain and inflicting this fear and the rage and all of that. When you look at the word rage, just for example, out of all of the 10 wounds, contained rage, we're looking at a word that is Rob, R-A-B, Rob. And when you look at Rob, that the root word of rabies is R-A-B. And so I don't know if it was through revelation or just how I received this information, but putting two and two together, even as just a researcher, you can see that rabies transfers through an attack. It transfers through a bite and an opening of the skin. And so when we look spiritually, scientifically, just on a human plane as to what that was, it was them transferring what was inside of them into our ancestors. And when we think about the kind of fear, I'm not talking about, I'm afraid of that dog coming down the street, or I'm afraid of heights. We're talking about living one's entire life in absolute abject terror, where you had to train your body, your mind, your psyche, everything for certain sounds, certain smells, looking to read, the master, the overseer, that read their mood and who are they looking at, and all of the things. I mean, this fear was just pumped and pumped and pumped into our ancestors, and it through their DNA, through their DNA, it inadvertently was passed down to us. And so we're masking and pretending, and we're, and again, as I told you, when you were so gracious to come on my podcast on Saturday, as I told you, I would never victim shame. Never. Never. I mean, why should I oppress the oppressed? With more shame. So I'll never throw a blanket across this situation and say, every Black person's like that. Every white person's like that. But what I do realize is that, as you said, Sister Ruby, yes, there has been other forms of enslavement. Yes, there has been other forms of incarceration and whatnot, but ours was exacerbated by the deliberate injection of fear, rage, mental illness, all the things, all the wounds. And I'll tell you what they are. So in my book, there are 10 main wounds, and then there are sub wounds underneath each one of those. The first one is fear. Fear stands alone because it's the granddaddy of all the wounds. It sits like, if you imagine, a command post, and it informs all the other wounds, what to do, where to go to cause the most damage between people, organizations, countries, like that. So that's what fear does. But then there's contained rage. There's jealousy. We know there's a lot of that. Self-hatred, damaged belief systems, over and underachieving, mental illness, grief and brokenness, death, and masking and pretending. And if you look, what my book does and what my work does is it takes us from a historical context, connects the dots to our current cultural construct, and then offers ways to a path to bring us out. And my next book is called The Path.
You met the definition of my genius, my expert. See,
Yes,
I tell you, you just can't know the situation. You have to have studied the situation. Then you have to come up with a solution for the situation. For me to consider that you're the expert I'm referring to.
That's right.
Because like anything else, again, comparing this analogy, make an analogy of the virus. We didn't go around looking for just anybody. When that virus came, I went to my primary doctor who had all knowledge of whatever he was about, primary doctor, you know. But he said to me very quickly, well, I'm not the expert. Now that says something. He was not hesitant to make sure you knew. I didn't know, I haven't studied into that particular area.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not the expert. When we begin to understand and acknowledge that for our particular situation, we need specific people who have done specific work in that area. I call it that field.
That's right.
You know, that genre, I call it, because it's something different from what we would just, for instance, like you mentioned, there are different other people who have been enslaved. I even want to redefine that word. I know we have that word ma'afa and genocide, but I don't think that even fully define it the way I'm talking about. I want people to know when you hear us talking about what we went through, don't even try to compare it. You know, there's nothing in the dictionary
no comparison,
right,
no comparison.
that I've seen yet. I haven't heard anyone, with all the big words, I haven't heard anything come up to compare or to describe exactly what we went through different from what the other quote enslaved people went through. Now the two things I know that we can immediately see the difference is we were stripped, unlike any other group that had ever been talked about being enslaved. We were stripped, and when you're stripped of everything, that makes the difference.
It does.
Not only were we stripped, but we were treated in a way that was not just abuse.
Inhumane. It was.
It was inhumane and uncommonly different because it was not even like you would treat an animal.
Yeah, it's cruel.
You know,
It's cruel.
so when we say inhumane, it was not even like you would treat an animal.
Exactly.
So we need to get those people, and I'm so pleased that you are right. You have written your book. I'm pleased that Dr. DeGrew, who wrote the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and of course, I'm just thankful for Dr. Chris Wilson. We have a slew of people, Dr. Ben, Dr.
A whole history.
a whole history of them who have put it in print.
Yes.
So we know they know what they're talking about, but the system will not allow them to come together under one accord. I think we need those people. I said that the three elements I think that will kind of save us will be the faith-based person, the historians, true historian, not just know it, and the psychologist.
That's right.
And those three elements together will come with some conclusions about how we can get cured for this kind of stuff.
But it's funny because when I met my sister Paige, and I've known Ruby for many, many years, decades even. And I told Ruby, I said, quite candidly, what you're doing here on the East Coast, Paige is doing the same thing on the West Coast. And to have you two come together was just beautiful. And I was there when you first two met. And one of the things that I love about your book, Paige, is not just the book, but in the book, you have, and especially when you read from the book, you actually gave us a dramatic picture of what that young lady went through. So I could see what she went through. And you talk about your father and what he went through. Well, quite frankly, that was our middle passage, because we were in a confined place. We couldn't go up for bathroom breaks or water breaks or anything. Everything we had to do, we did there. And so what you say and what Ruby say, those wounds are in our DNA. And I'm so glad you sisters have come together. And I I expect great work from both of y'all. I really do.
Oh,
I mean, it
thank
gives me
you.
just goosebumps to be in your presence because I do believe that you two together is a dynamic duo.
Yes, I
She by
wanted to
herself
clarify
as a
something
duo.
too because I know
She
my sister's
alone is a
powerful.
dynamic
My
No,
duo.
you
sister's
two
powerful.
together,
She's
powerful.
very powerful. Um, I want to just clarify something too because I know that you're the unapologetic amateur looking for experts, and I want to clarify that what I'm an expert at is defining
Hmm.
the cause and clarifying the exit.
Oh, I love that. The cause
So,
and
but
exit.
here's what's really exciting
Yes.
is that what I understand is that each and every one of us will acquire our healing in a different way.
Ooh,
Why?
ooh,
Because it will come based on our experience, the filters of our experience in America. It will come through our own exploration. It will come through our willingness and ability to actually go the path that it takes to get to the end in the healing. So there are some of us who are willing, there are some of us in denial. There are some of us who don't have time because we're all busy trying to get the bag and get the trappings of America.
that's so
The other
funny.
thing too is that in the 20 years, 20 plus years that I've been doing the research, I mean, what I recognize is that there are a couple of things. The first thing is our answers are not coming through economics. Our
No,
answers are not coming through politics.
Yes.
no.
They're not coming through science. They're
Mm-mm.
not coming through education. And I'm sorry to say that it's also not coming through psychology. However, psychology is definitely necessary.
Yes,
Oh,
definitely.
definitely.
But what I want to say about that is that if it was going to come through one of those modes, we would be there.
Oh, yeah.
We would be there. But here's the thing. I sat with a new cohort of psychologists, brandly minted doctors of psychology from USC, one of the primary, universities in the land,
Right, right.
University of Southern California,
Yes, yes.
and very distinguished group of individuals, psychologists, young, some, middle-aged, and they were with their professor, who is their mentor.
Yes, yes.
And she invited me. She said, she's a friend of mine. She said, Paige, come in here, come in this room. I need you to share what you know with them.
Right, right.
And they were all of color, black and brown.
Wow.
And so I go in, and really, I only shared with them from the first three wounds,
Yes,
which is fear. That's a really important one.
yes.
And then contained rage, and then jealousy.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I just went through what I know. I read a little bit. I answered their questions. I did all the things. And at the end, there wasn't a dry eye.
Hmm.
And the reason was because two reasons. First, they said to me, I wasn't guessing why they were crying. They told me. First, they said, we have spent all this time, we have paid all this money, and in this 1 hour, you've been able to open up a portal, a way for us
Wow.
to get
Wow.
at the things that are bothering or the things that are destroying the lives of our patients much more powerfully and effectively than the tools we already have. And we just
Isn't
graduated.
that something?
And then the other reason was because it hit them in such a way that they have begun to get very familiar in a very short period of time with what these wounds are and what they can do.
Yes, yes.
And so, as I was also sharing with my sister at the when we did the panel in New Jersey, as I was studying all of these academians, all these academicians, all these economists, all these professors, politicians, psychologists, educators of all kinds, scientists. I mean, I went for all of it. It was just one big gumbo, right? And as I was making my discovery, there were a couple of people who I really, really admire. And I think I learned a little bit of wisdom from my sister on Saturday, and I won't say names, but they are giants in their industry.
Yes,
And when
yes.
I say that, I mean in their area of expertise, they are two go-to individuals, one of who is like a hero to me,
Okay.
iconic, right?
Yes, yes.
And both on two separate occasions, were on public platforms when asked the question, now that we know all that we know about what's in our DNA, for example, or why we are affected by so heavily by what happened to our ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
what do we do about that? What do you say to people? And both of them said those fatal three words, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Then that's what
Well,
they
what?
should have said.
That's what. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that's what they should have said. But I'll
That's
get
what
into
they
this.
should have said
Yeah,
because
because
they
they don't
didn't
know.
They
know.
don't
They
know.
didn't
Yeah.
They
know.
didn't
They may
know.
have
But
had all the equipment that this society, this Western
everything.
society gave them. And my mama called it educated fool. See, that's what my mama was saying. So just because you
Right.
have that kind of education doesn't
They
mean
wrote a
you're
song about that, right?
exactly. And I can, so when I'm using the word expert, I don't mean those that maybe have gone through these particular great colleges and university here that's not relatable to what we're about.
Yeah, yes,
I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, I use the word relatable too, meaning that those who have studied us and about us and understand what we went through different from anyone else. So if they are going through these universities believing that they're studying something about us that's similar to anyone else, they're off the base right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
They,
yeah.
Love
they're
that.
not, you know
Love
what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
why
Love
I
that.
say psychology, because unless we understand that we do need something to unravel some of the cobwebs that are running through our brain. I call it brainwashing. I'm a good friend of mine, Dr. California. He tells me, Ruby, it's not brainwashing, it's brain dirtying.
Come
And
on. Come
so
on.
long we have dirtied the brain and we
And
don't
that's why we
understand
need a
from a very,
purging.
yeah,
That's why we need a
and
purging
it's going
because
to
so many
take,
people are trying to interject and inject more information and more this and more.
yeah,
No, you just hit it.
yeah,
We need a
yeah,
purging, and it's not just the
yeah,
mind. As
yeah.
a matter of fact, to me, the mind is incidental to what needs to really
Purge and
occur.
then inject some truth,
Yes,
some
yes.
That's right.
seriousness and purity of who
we
we
need
are.
that. We need that.
Because
Yeah.
unless we begin to understand that, because some of us poo-poo the idea, like what I was saying about my pastor bringing this mental health into our church,
Yes,
he
yes.
understands clearly
That's
the
important.
degree to which we have been damaged, and until we understand, like any other major catastrophe, if you will,
Yes,
that have
yes.
inflicted us by whatever means, if it was a virus or whatever,
it is, yeah.
and we don't ask anybody, or we don't even suggest to people that you don't need the epidemiologist or whoever, the virologist or
Yeah,
whoever.
whatever.
We
taking
need
care of
them
it.
all.
We need
We
Yes.
them.
need them, and they didn't
Yeah,
ask,
because
wouldn't come after
come
Ruby
together,
now,
yeah.
because Ruby may know how to proclaim. I know how to defend, but I don't know how to define or even execute the method to get me back to where I need to be.
Yeah.
So with us as black folks, our situation has been even 3 and 4 times worse than that virus ever could be. So
Oh
think
my
about it from
God.
that perspective. Then if that is the case, we can't just rely on what we've been having to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
us through it.
no,
Something
no.
have to happen
Right.
to tell us
Right.
we need someone specific in that area, not just because they
Right.
went to UCLA or one of
whatever.
those other,
Right,
highfalutin
right.
colleges, because obviously they are not teaching. Like what they told you, Paige, I don't have the answer.
I don't know.
Like
I
my-
don't
My
know.
MD told me when I asked him about that virus, that pandemic that hadn't come around in for 100
Right.
years. I'm not the expert.
You said, I don't know. I don't know.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and
That's
I
right.
thought it was a beautiful thing that he would admit that without feeling slighted or feeling of, he had to, wasn't feeling well about denying what he was. Has nothing to do with
Yeah,
that.
because it's more important to know what we don't know than to
What
know
we
what we do
don't know,
know.
exactly.
Because as long as we keep stirring around in the same pot trying to find the answers to what
Yeah.
our dilemma, we're going to start finding the same answers. And we know that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a change is what?
Yeah,
Insanity.
Insanity. That's
And
insanity.
so
yes.
what we want to do is we want to look to
Yeah.
who we really are at our essence. And who we really are at our essence as African people is we're communal.
Yes, we are. We are.
We're very, well, typically, we know that we believe in intergenerational thinking.
Yes.
So that there's no one too young
That's right.
And there's no one too old to be excluded from any conversation about
That's
our
true.
healing.
That's true.
We
Yeah,
need
yeah.
every
Everybody.
single
Everybody.
one of us. And the big thing that I want to leave us with is some healing, some hope,
Please,
some
please.
hope,
Yeah.
because yet we're stirring around in this pot of muck and mire and just getting more and more dirty and just more and more confused
Confused.
about
Yes.
where we're trying
Confused.
to go.
That's
Right.
But
right.
let's look at who we really are. And when we look at who we really are and what occurred, then we can start to get at and tease at what's going on. So being a communal people, being an intergenerational people where no one is excluded, being brought into the colonies where we were then brutalized, stripped, branded, raped, murdered,
Yeah.
all of the things.
All of those
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
But the thing that got us the most, are you listening?
Yes.
If you're listening, say, I'm listening.
I'm listening.
I'm
I'm listening.
I'm a listening.
I'm listening.
I do that in my classes.
I'm
Listen, the thing that got us the most
Mhm.
is that we were separated from our families.
And
See,
stripped
yes,
from everything that was
Everything.
precious
But
to
watch
us.
this.
Mhm.
If we're a communal people and our
We are.
primary value
Mhm.
is in that everyone in the community group has a role, and then that begins to be disintegrated,
Yes. Yes.
then what happened was much more than what happened to our minds. The most damage was done to our hearts.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
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 Our
We weren't,
hearts are broken.
and we
If
weren't
we
allowed
look
to
at
cry about it.
and you need to cry. That's why your book is so
Yes, it is.
important.
That's part of the
About
purging. That's
the
purging.
ode to Black men. Why can't I cry? Why can't I cry? Is because I was so busy trying to hold it
Yeah.
together
Mhm.
and so busy trying to check for the signs of, where's Master today? What's his mood? What's going to happen? Where's the next meal coming from? How much cotton do I have to pick today? Or
Yeah.
or rice or whatever, wherever we were. Because guess what? The Caribbeans
Yeah.
Yes,
also
yes.
got hit, and people in that's a whole other conversation.
That's
Don't
a
go there.
whole nother.
Don't go there.
All
Don't
in
go
the
there. Don't go
diaspora.
there.
All
Bad
of us in
neighborhood
the
for this
diaspora.
conversation.
You know,
But we
oh,
have
I'm
to
sorry.
contend with our hearts,
Yeah.
and here's what makes it so hard.
Mm.
It's painful.
Painful. Painful. You say in your book here, I'm just going to read this little verse because it caught my
Please.
attention. Say, we might be shocked, traumatized, or begin to think irrational thoughts. For most of us, this information is buried so deeply that once we face it, we find it takes a special process, special process
special
to
process.
deal with it. And
Yes.
that process takes time and
Yes.
understanding. People who know how to get to the root
Get at it.
mental, because it's not just physical. We get physical and we go immediately to the doctor. I get my hand hurt and I was just, oh wow, I go to a doctor.
Right there.
But mental, we can't shake the slavery out of it. When I got my message from the Lord that I'm going to give you examples rather than you try to explain, and then I use that virus as an example of how we knew right away that we need special people for special things. But when it comes to us, we think we can just accept anyone to tell us what ails us, what's wrong with us, how we can get over it, and that we should get over it. That's what my first book was about, verbal healing. We need to stop using those expressions that keep us damaged. All it does, it keep us believing that there's something other than what the expert would know. Put that again. I use the word expert because I know they have studied it, and they can define it. They can tell us what, just what you did, Paige. You went through telling us what these hurts was about, how they came about, how they affected us, and how they continue to impact our lives. And until you can do that, with some kind of authority, then
you're gonna have that authority.
just be like me. I'm amateur.
Just stick with me. Stick with me, sis. Stick with me, sis.
But she's being very humble here.
No,
very
no.
humble.
I'm trying to find you folks, and that's why I'm so.
I mean, all of us are experts, and let me tell you why I say that.
Don't let our people believe that. Don't say that.
No. Watch what
Correct
what.
that.
Just watch where I'm going with it. All of us are experts on one thing. We're experts on what we know. And some of us don't know much.
You just said it.
But
And
but
that's no
but
flag.
every
It's no shade
but
on anybody.
everyone knows at least this much
Yeah.
about themselves, their own
It's
life.
not
And that's
talking
what I
about
mean.
your academic excellence or your lack of. It's talking about what you know in a particular area. You know,
Gotcha.
my plumber, I mean, can run rings around me 3 times over. You know, he's an expert in
He's an
that.
expert.
My electrician is an expert in that.
And what he's doing.
But
Yes.
in terms of us as African people and what we've been through and what we need, there we got to have special experts. Oh, I'm going to recognize my folks here now. Lorraine Bonner
Yes,
from
yes.
Pennsylvania. Thank you, baby. Lula Salvador. And Renee, thank you, Laura Lynn. Oh, I'm so pleased that you guys are watching, you know, and Lorraine is watching. Keep up the great work, she said. Sheila watching, okay, or just keep it rolling up. Okay, Rose, Robert Cabbage Talk, hello family, I'm watching. And
Aw.
keep it rolling. Rashida, thank you, babe. I'm ready to read the book. Okay, see, you got someone
That's
ready to
right.
read your book.
Read,
Dina,
Very
read the
I'm
book.
good.
Read the
listening.
book.
Okay, we got all these good people out here listening, and if you like the show and if it does something for you and to you, you can always keep watching, first of all. Secondly, you can always donate, you know, Cash App, Zelle, check, and in any way you want to send it to us. And we really appreciate you because we want to keep this information going because when the scripture that says people will perish for lack of knowledge, we here try to keep correct knowledge because we got a lot of knowledge coming through. I have folks all the time, and the folks I bring through for real. But I mean, outside of ourselves, we have all kind of crazy knowledge. Like Governor DeSantis when he said that we came over here and they taught us.
Multiple skills.
Multiple skills.
From
Oh
crazy.
my
flavor.
gosh.
But we
Don't
got
start.
knowledge, yeah, that we are going
That's
to
a
bring
whole
here.
other show.
That's
That's
another
a whole
show, right?
another
Yeah.
show. But when we bring our people on, like the sister here, we call her the queen, the Sister Paige, we created a little game a couple of weeks ago. We tell our people, rather than when we approach each other, man or woman approach each other, we look at ourselves. First of all, we have to know that many of us who came over was a royalty,
Yes.
and queens and kings and whatever. So when we look at each other, rather than pointing our fingers and seeing the bad of us, we see each one of us as a king or queen. So if I see you and I call you Queen Page, that's what it is. My brother here, King Terry, King, that's what it is. And that way we'll begin to unravel some of the, quote, hatred that we have been brought on
That's right.
of each other.
That's right. And that's why we call each other also, on the plantations, since we had been stripped
Yeah.
of our names. Like in my book, I talk about Titilayo and Adolfo. The two that I explained were in that slave cabin together. And even though we were not allowed to be married, we started jumping a broom and all of that. But I'm saying that, they stripped our names. And so that's why we started calling each other, uncle and papa and all the things, even though that may not have really been your real uncle or papa or grandma but we just put that title on so that we could really feel like we're a whole human being. Let me tell you something interesting too about this book. When I first wrote this book, and every platform I would go to and every stage, I would start out by saying, well, I unapologetically wrote this book for my people, meaning us's, right? The diaspora. But then what I started realizing is that in the beginning, there were more Europeans reading my book than anyone else.
Well, they're very interested in us.
And what
They're
I
interested in us,
discovered is that they have their own wounds from that era, and that they inflicted those wounds on our ancestors. And so they too need a healing. Now, am I going around gathering up all the white folk? No. If they happen to get some crumbs off the table, that's great for them. But what I'm saying is that when they read the information, it begins to affect them as well. And let me tell you, this book, even if it were not my own, I promise you this, even if it were not my own, I would have to say that this book is one of it is the most in my life. I again have been researching for 20 years or more. And it is the only book that I know of that teases out the true character and personality of the wounds themselves. Like, what is contained rage?
Yes,
What
yes,
does it
yes.
do?
That's necessary. See, we got to
That's
make
important.
sure we understand that you have defined it in a way that we talk about here all the time on this podcast. And it's no cute. I'm not being cute when I say unapologetic amateur looking for an expert. I want people to understand that's serious, because when you begin to know that you're not the expert in a situation that is so dire, so serious,
Desperate, yeah.
then you won't attempt to insult me by pretending that just because you went to Harvard or whatever. Because I love my our ex-president, President Obama. Love him. I just admire him. I just adore him.
Yes.
But when they brought him on with this, what's his book? My Brother's Keeper.
My brother's keeper.
And he meant no
Oh,
harm. He was trying to help, but they grabbed him from wherever to have him to speak on that. He's not
oh
the
my
expert.
word.
He's not the expert.
No, he's not.
And they really shouldn't have done that. They never grabbed a white president to speak on the issue so serious
Yeah.
with folks. You know, they wouldn't have grabbed
They wouldn't have done
the
that.
Jewish president to speak on the Holocaust. They grabbed someone who knew about the intricacies of that Holocaust and what it did and how it done. So they would get folks like that. But with us, because we don't know how to put it into some kind of stratosphere of importance, they then will assign it to any other catastrophe.
Yeah, which is,
But this is different. There's
big mistake.
nothing like it. Nothing has ever been like it. And you can be on earth or in the Bible. You don't find any other catastrophe
Right, you
that
won't- you won't
matched
find it.
this.
Not like this.
Not
Not
like
like
that.
this.
Until
And
we
that
understand that.
perpetuates itself for generations.
Oh, yes.
You know, we talk about the Willie Lynch letter, and I did some deep research on that.
yeah.
And what I discovered with the experts, historical and otherwise,
Right.
is that no one has been able to actually pinpoint a man named Willie Lynch. But what we do know is that the letter that was written and that strategy that was perfected and perpetuated
Right.
has continued to perpetuate
So
itself
it wasn't even
throughout.
necessary for there
It's
to be
hitting
a
us right
physical-
now.
Yeah,
Right. It
that's the
wasn't
point.
necessary
That's
to be
the
a
point.
physical body. It was synonymous to what we went through. Brother Lenore, Brother Grayson, thanks for watching. Sheila, thanks for watching. Marcella Cooper, okay, you guys continue
Hello,
to
Brother
watch.
Grayson. Hello, Sister Cooper.
All right. Yes.
Yes, so my
Actually-
book can be
Time
found
is
on
flying.
Amazon. It
Yeah,
can be
please.
found on Audible.
Oh,
I
yeah,
also
please.
have coursework coming up.
Okay, tell us about that. I wanted you to.
The coursework that's coming up is for everyone. It's not a college or a university level course. It is for an individual to be able to go in and begin to excavate these wounds for themselves and discover how are these wounds operating in my life personally. Remember, I said that the healing is not a blanket healing. It is a very individual process. And what this coursework does is it teases out for that individual what it is they need to work on and how. I also have another book coming up. It's called The Path, and the coursework is based on the path. So if the first book is what it is, then the path is how to.
See?
How do we get
Well,
out
that's
of
what
this?
I'm
Looking
talking
forward to
about.
that. Looking
How
forward to that.
to. You have given us what it is, how it is, and what to do about it.
What to
That's
do
what-
about it.
And that's what is required. Because just to pontificate, we all can do that, and we all need to do that because we all need to talk.
giving us a
But
path,
when we are
a path.
talking about healing
Path.
the wounds of 200 years, that's serious.
Come on. That's serious.
Serious,
That is
yeah.
serious.
It's more than serious. It is absolutely crucial
Yes.
that we
Very
get at
right.
this, because you know what, this is the exciting part for me. I'm glad we're saying this at the close. This is exciting. So what's exciting to me is just how beautiful, how grand, how royal, how powerful, how resilient, how intelligent, how special we are, and the whole world knows it. But just imagine how much more powerful and unified we will be. Not we can be.
Yeah, but we
We
will be.
will be when we get at these wounds,
Yes.
purge them,
Yes.
and inject what we really need.
Hallelujah.
And you have to say good night now because we're at the end of the program.
Hey,
you.
we're gonna
Thank
have
you.
to have you back again,
Thank
and I know
you.
you're gonna be back in our town sometime, hopefully
Yes,
soon, with
absolutely.
Reverend Grayson when you
Absolutely.
get some other stuff together.
Okay.
Yes, and
Yes,
we'll stay connected until then.
yes, we will. Thank you so much, and bless you.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless
you.
you.
Thank you, my sister.
I appreciate you.
Love,
Thank
love.
you. Bye.
The pair.
Healing the wounds
Coming
of
soon.
America.